Someone once wrote, "Yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, and today is a gift." That's why it's called the present. And the present is a gift, because the present is where God has placed us. Sometimes people think that their circumstances need to change before they can experience, find, or grow in faith, hope, or love. But the truth is, the only place you can experience, find, or grow in faith, hope, or love is the present. The past is gone, and putting something off to tomorrow is very often the same thing as not doing it at all. When I was growing up in Plymouth, there was a pub in downtown that had a sign in the window that said, "Free lunch tomorrow." And I remember when I was a little kid, we were driving past it one day, and I noticed it. I was with my dad, and I said, "Dad, we have to go there for the free lunch tomorrow." And my father looked at me, and he smiled, and he said, "Tomorrow never comes." Why do we put things off till tomorrow? In many cases, we put things off to tomorrow because there's maybe a good that we want, but attaining it or doing it or even starting to get there is hard. I think about before I go to bed. I know I'm going to sleep better if I read from a physical book, but as I sit in my comfortable chair, it's so much easier just to scroll on my phone than it is just to open that book, which I know I'm going to enjoy when I start reading it. It can be hard to do the good we know we ought to do. But as much as we hem and we haw, and as much as we drag our feet, nothing changes until we get started. And the key to getting started and making the most of the present is this: being able to sacrifice joyfully. Sacrifice joyfully. By definition, sacrifice is difficult. By definition, sacrifice is a burden. However, sacrifice becomes easier when we do it for a greater good. And this is the idea behind a delayed gratification. We sacrifice a little bit of comfort now so that we can enjoy more of it in the future. And a classic example of this is what's been called the Sanford marshmallow experiment. In the Sanford marshmallow experiment, children were given the option of one marshmallow immediately, or if they waited a period of time, 2 marshmallows. And the researchers found that the children who waited longer tended to have better life outcomes. A lot of people, and maybe you're among them, sacrifice gratification in so many ways so that you can be successful. But success does not make sacrifice a joy. For sacrifice to become a joy, it has to be motivated by love. And love, while it is rooted in our own hearts, is always directed to something outside ourselves. The traditional definition of love is to desire what is the best for the other or for the beloved. So we don't love because we get something back. We love because we want what is best for the other. Jesus was born, and Jesus gave everything for us, not because he got anything in return, but because he wanted what was best for us, and because he wanted to do the will of his Father. And to be clear, Jesus didn't just give a little when it was easy. No, Jesus gave everything when it cost everything. And for us, that's the model of love. Because we are only ever willing to give or to sacrifice in proportion to our love. We're only willing to give or to sacrifice in proportion to our love. I think of all the sacrifices that my parents made for me. They didn't do it because they thought they'd get a return on their investment. No, they did it because they wanted what was best for me, even if I happened to be difficult along the way. And I think of all the parents here. I'm sure there's not anything you wouldn't sacrifice for your children. And the reason for that is quite simple. We are willing to sacrifice in proportion to our love. So when our love is great, we can move mountains and think nothing of it. But when our love is small, and maybe you've seen this in yourself, even the smallest inconvenience seems so big. And if your love is perfect, your sacrifices can even become a joy. I recently came across the story of Emil Capon, who is a U.S. Army chaplain who is also a Catholic priest. For his valor as a prisoner of war during the Korean War, he was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. Based on the reports, Father Capon was always joyful. No matter the difficulty, he had a cheerful disposition. Right before his capture, they said Father Capon could have escaped, but he kept running into the battle to rescue the wounded. And then while he was in captivity, Father Capon cared for the sick, he sacrificed for others, and he prayed with Catholics and non-Catholics alike. Amidst the beatings, the mistreatment, and the malnourishment, Father Capon gave hope. He sacrificed joyfully, and he did what he could to lift spirits. Even when he was being taken away to die, Father Capon, they said, smiled, and he waved to his fellow prisoners and told them he was happy to be going with Jesus. Why was he able to make such a joyful sacrifice? Because of who he carried in his heart, Jesus Christ, whose birthday we celebrate today. Certainly the circumstances for him were less than ideal to make a joyful sacrifice. But so were the circumstances in which Jesus was born. They weren't perfect. There was a tyrannical government. Mary and Joseph were away from home, and there was no room in the inn. I bet on some level, until he cradled the Christ child in his arms, even St. Joseph felt like a failure. But in God's providence, the circumstances were perfect. And so the circumstances are for you today. You don't need to wait to grow in faith, hope, and love. You can only do it today. Now, I know that each of us here carry different burdens in our hearts. And I know that in different ways, each of our circumstances are imperfect. Maybe you're not sure about how you're going to make ends meet, or if you're going to be successful in your work. Maybe you're worried about the future for your kids. Maybe you're mourning the loss of a loved one. Maybe you feel stressed out and pushed to your limit. Or maybe you just have that feeling that there's something missing from your life. Maybe it's something else. But in any way, if this is you, I want to give you an encouragement. Regardless of your circumstances, today is a gift. Regardless of your circumstances, today is a gift. Today is a gift because Jesus, who is Emmanuel, God with us, he wants to enter your heart anew. He who is God and man, the Word made flesh, he stands at the threshold of your heart. And if you let him in, he will fill you with his love and empower you to make the joyful sacrifices that make life worth living and that build up our brothers and sisters. I say let in because Jesus never forces himself into our lives. It's up to you and it's up to me to let him in. And what better time for that is there than now?